Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Meghan Yerhot, a Director of Development in the College of Agriculture, Food Systems, and Natural Resources at North Dakota State University. We are so grateful that you are here with us today to learn more about how NDSU is addressing food security issues near and far. We have a great program lined up for you today. Dr. Kalidas Shetty, Professor of Plant Science and the Director of the Global Institute of Food Security and International Agriculture at NDSU, will be joining us. He will share his research and the issues surrounding food insecurity around the world. Meghan Yerhot, a graduate student from Austin, Minnesota, will discuss NDSU's newly launched food pantry, Goods for the Herd, and the importance of making access to nutrient-rich foods available for all NDSU students. And finally, I'll provide an overview of NDSU Extension's Family Nutrition Program and the Master Gardening Program, two long-standing initiatives across North Dakota that are building community food resilience by teaching people essential food skills. But before we dive into today's program, I would like to provide a brief overview of what food insecurity is for those who may not be as familiar with this issue. Food insecurity is not knowing where your next meal is coming from and having no idea how to find and afford that food. Food insecurity is seen and experienced in many different ways, but we know that when people are food insecure, it results in mental, physical, and emotional harm. That's why NDSU created NDSU's Food Security Fund that includes two facets to help combat food insecurity. The first is Swipe Out Hunger. Swipe Out Hunger is a national program that provides meals to students through NDSU Dining. These meals are loaded onto students' IDs, and they are able to access meals as they need them at any NDSU Dining Center. Swipe Out Hunger not only provides nutritious meals to those in need, it also helps to reduce food waste on our campus. And the second is Goods for the Herd, NDSU's new on-campus food pantry that just opened in February of this year. When students are worried about where their next meal is coming from, they will often skip meals or buy cheaper, less nutritious food, AKA living off of ramen noodles or the dollar menu, to help them stay fuller longer. Since opening Goods for the Herd, more than 100 students have been able to access a wide variety of nutritious food from the pantry, reducing their stress and nourishing their minds and bodies. It's important to note that of these students who have visited the pantry, 78% reported that they are working part-time, and more than 50% are graduate students. These students are working, but they still need a little help. And as we think about food security broadly, we know it's not only a problem for our NDSU community. There are nearly 50 million Americans who are food insecure, and globally, 1 in 4 people, or 1.9 billion, are moderately or severely food insecure. So to talk more about this global issue, we are so grateful to have Dr. Kalidas Shetty, a professor of plant sciences at NDSU and the founding director of the Global Institute of Food Security and International Agriculture. Dr. Shetty will share his research on the challenges and solutions to food security around the world. Dr. Shetty, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy and delighted to be here and to support your program. It's a very worthy goal. Thank you.
Wonderful. Let's start by having you explain the challenges of food security globally.
Okay. Great, thanks. So traditionally, food security was globally was built on the rationale that we have our macronutrients, which is carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, minerals, and vitamins. And so built on a 2,000 calorie based diet. So traditionally, this has been the case. And based on that, in 1996 World Food Summit has food security defined as food security exists when all people at all times have physical, economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for active and healthy life. So that was what the World Food Summit, based on a calorie model, was built. And it has 4 dimensions: availability, access, utilization, and stability, which is fine. But a drastic change has happened to us globally since 2000. And that is, while 1 billion of us still need this basic calorie and micronutrient needs, but there are 1.5 billion more than the undernourished who have too much of calorie, sort of excess calories, meaning high carbohydrate diets. So a globe with less micronutrients. So globally, we have gone to a new dimension of food security where we have enough calories, but we are deficient in micronutrients and other protective elements. So in a sense, we are less diverse in our food choices. That means we have narrowed down our food choices. So as a result of which, we have an explosion of comorbidity, meaning we are moving, our world is having what's called a global burden of diseases from diet. So this is really a new dimension of food security and also global health. So now we have diet really underpinning global health issues in a very major way from the diet. So we have these two dimensions. We still have 1 billion people on the planet who are still hungry. But we have 1.5 billion who have too many calories and leading towards comorbidity.
That is so interesting. I've heard that phrase, overfed but undernourished. So it's this imbalance of nutrients. And you mentioned the comorbidities that are associated with that. Can you expand on that a little bit more in terms of what that is?
Yeah,
creating?
so it's very fascinating. So since 2000, this issue of excess calorie, refined calories is sort of exploded around the world. And then there's just in April 2019, the famous British journal Lancet had a very interesting summary on global burden of disease from diet. And this is just 5 months before COVID emerged. And in that, they clearly show the global statistics on morbidity and also what's called the disabilities from this comorbidity. And so globally, we are more, every one of us are likely to be succumbing to diet-linked diseases than infectious diseases. So that's where we have come to. But what COVID has exposed is, if you see COVID data from around the world that's still emerging, and we are not end of COVID, but comorbidity was one of the central elements. So if you're urbanized, poor, and have comorbidity, the susceptibility is very high. And you can see this in Europe, Americas in general. And within America, if you see overall American statistics, average American, we have about 1,800 deaths per million. But then you go into urban African American or Latin American, it jumps to 4,000 deaths per million. And then you go into rural among indigenous communities, Native Americans, it jumps to 6,000 per million. And if you see what is underlying comorbidity was a very central issue where we have this calorie burden sort of widen, means there is a narrow choice where we don't have the diversity of diet, especially like, fruits and vegetables, the whole foods. And an average American takes 1 serving of fruits and vegetables, and within the comorbidity burden, it's 0.5 servings per day, where we should be having 7 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, along with whole grains. So this comorbidity, you can see we are just mapping that out, where we're seeing how infections and comorbidity are tied in, and COVID has exposed that globally. You can see the relationship.
Absolutely, and those numbers are very, very telling as well, how it's experienced around the world. For many of our listeners today, food security or insecurity are likely new terms for people, and many might be surprised to learn about these chronic illnesses like diabetes or obesity that are linked to food insecurity. So can you tell us specifically about your research and how it helps to meet the challenges to food security around the world?
Sure. So our main focus, our research focuses on the metabolic rationale and to understand food security itself, and then how do you rebuild the food system based on these breakdowns. So if you look at our food, we just look at what is our food. It's really a solar energy, meaning when solar energy splits water in plants, then the carbon gets hydrated. So we have carbon dioxide, carbon gets hydrated. So that's carbohydrates. So from carbohydrates, we get lipids. Then we have the nitrogen. The plants do that for us with the bacteria. And then we have amino acids and proteins. So that's our macronutrients. Essentially, it's solar energy captured in chemical energy. So we focus on what we consume, which is the carbon base. But really, all the breakdown is occurring really at what we breathe, because how we get our energy from the carbon, as the carbon is, as glucose is distributed through our blood, is at the mitochondria where we breathe. That's where the energy comes out. So as we have higher calorie burden and oxygen malfunction, but also breakdown in our microbiome, both of these are contributing to the breakdown in the chronic disease that we are seeing. So in our food system, we need to correct that. It's not just a macronutrient platform or the minerals and vitamin platform. They are much wider, and that's why you need to have more fruits, vegetables, more whole foods, because all of these protective elements that can counter the oxygen malfunction or the microbiome failure that's occurring. Fiber-rich diets support the microbiome. So both of these need to be supported. So our diet, we look at the metabolic basis of where the food system is failing globally. And how do we then look at it beyond just the micronutrient into these protective elements that are needed. And the great thing is Great Plains we have such diverse array of crops, not just soy, corn, right? So that's amazing. We have our farmers grow 40 to 50 crops in commercial production. So that's great as we see the future, how we could be a sort of a base for helping the global food security on a holistic approach.
It's so fascinating to hear about your research, and I definitely heard your plant sciences brain come out there as you were describing how these different foods and nutrients are created. So when we hear about plant sciences, especially in our area of production agriculture, they probably associate this research with large farms, but your research really extends into smaller operations and more to individuals, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that and how you work with local farmers and gardeners?
Sure. So on a broader level, we need still all the crops for our micronutrient balance. But after that, a lot of it is, where do we get our fruits and vegetables, right? So where do we get these other components of a healthy, wholesome diet? So from that perspective, our small farmers and our, especially indigenous communities, many of their traditional food system, all of this need to be retuned into this whole food system that gives these protective elements that are missing that I just mentioned earlier. And also globally, if you look, the large-scale agriculture only feeds 30% of the world population. So 70% of the world population is fed by 500 million farmers who have less than 1 acre of land. So that's really where the food system is, right? And so we find that all parts of this production system is important. So here in Great Plains, our big farmers are equally important as our small farmers. And on either side of Red River, we have so many small farmers growing vegetables, and local food systems are coming up. That's, all these need to be built on this health targeted food system that is, we are missing at this moment. So from that point, it's exciting to work with each of these communities and the local food system.
That's wonderful. It's so neat to hear how your research and knowledge is extending broadly across our food system. Dr. Shetty, it's been an absolute pleasure to hear about your work today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I also know that before the event today, you shared that you made a personal generous donation to the NDSU Food Security Fund. So thank you so much for not only your research, but also for supporting campus's food security work.
Thank you, Megan. And thank you again for having me.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
In addition to the work NDSU does to address global food security issues, we also have some amazing programs to help improve our state's food security through NDSU Extension. NDSU Extension is the education outreach arm of our land-grant institution. Extension agents are present in every county across North Dakota helping to address the needs of people who live in those places, utilizing research conducted right here on NDSU campus. Extension has many programs that work to improve food security, but two that I'll highlight today are SNAP Education, referred to as the Family Nutrition Program in North Dakota, and the Master Gardener Program. The Family Nutrition Program is a community outreach program where extension agents work with lower income families to teach them how to make healthier food choices and to stretch their food dollars. These educators do many things to improve food security in our state. They teach kids about the importance of eating fruits and vegetables, teach parents how to create food budgets and meal plans. They start programs so food stamps can be accepted at local farmers markets, and they teach people how to cook so they can take healthy, inexpensive ingredients and make them into delicious, low-cost meals. These educators work specifically with families who receive food stamps, known today as SNAP, or WIC vouchers, food benefits through the Women's, Infants, and Children's Program. Specifically focusing on these groups helps to ensure that these agents are giving their time, education, and efforts to those who need it most. Another extension program that enhances food insecurity in North Dakota is the Master Gardener Program. This program teaches individuals across North Dakota how to best grow food for themselves and their families based on the varieties that grow best in our region. In addition to raising the personal food security of those who become master gardeners, the program also requires that individuals who attain this credential provide volunteer hours in their community every year. Through this volunteer service, master gardeners provide so much value to raising food security in this state. Many help to run community gardening programs, increasing opportunities for others to grow their own food. They help to establish school gardens so that fresh local food can feed our kids, and they donate fresh garden produce to local food pantries and soup kitchens. In Cass County, our master gardeners run a program called Veggies for the Pantry, where they host collection sites all across the community so home gardeners can deliver their extra produce, and the master gardeners then deliver it to redistribute to area food pantries. In 2020, these volunteers collected 13,937 pounds of fresh, homegrown garden produce. That is a lot of veggies. We are so lucky to have these two valuable extension programs in our state. Now for our second conversation, we are going to learn how NDSU is addressing food insecurity right on our campus. We are joined now by Meghan Yerhot, a PhD student at NDSU studying developmental sciences. Meghan is truly the driving force behind our campus's food security work, including establishing our new food pantry, Goods for the Herd. Meghan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really looking forward to talking to you all about what we've been doing on campus.
Awesome. So Meghan, during your time at NDSU, you have focused intensely on student success and working with underrepresented and first generation students. And also as an undergraduate, you yourself were a first generation college student. So can you tell us a little bit more about what it means to be a first generation college student and how that might potentially affect a student's college experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a proud first generation college student, and I would say a lot of my work stems from my own experiences and through some other experiences as well. But being a first generation college student comes with a lot of different challenges that are often overlooked. Sometimes these students are coming to college with lack of financial and family support. So they're kind of on their own to navigate this, sometimes scary environment. And so these students come with varying life experiences. And so sometimes it's the first time that they're managing their finances and really trying to figure out where they fit in. And so while I've been working at NDSU, I had the privilege of being an advisor, and I advised other first generation and low income students. And through this experience, I heard a lot of stories about various stressors and challenges that they faced regarding finances. And then also sometimes they would only have one meal a day. And so that really sparked my interest in kind of my research of what can we do on our campus to really support these students and combat food insecurity here at NDSU?
That's amazing. And so glad that you have been on this path for so long to be leading this work. One thing that we often do is we have a tendency to compare our own experiences with students today. Some people might reference the fact that they worked all throughout college without needing any assistance, or possibly taking pride in the fact that they lived off of something like packaged ramen for weeks and weeks. But as I mentioned earlier, nearly 78% of the visitors to Goods for the Herd have reported that they work part-time, and more than 50% are graduate students. So we know that there is a gap, a widening gap that exists between the cost of college and minimum wage, and that has grown wider and wider in recent decades. For North Dakota, for example, minimum wage is $7.25. So even if a student were to work a full 40-hour job plus do all of their schooling, he or she would likely not be able to cover the costs of tuition, books, fees, housing, food, and all the other basic necessities. So can you share a little bit more of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to share, personal experiences that I've had with students, and I've heard a lot of this, right? They're juggling multiple jobs to afford the cost of tuition, to pay for their textbooks. And a lot of them, as you said, are graduate students. And as a graduate student myself, we're typically given lower paying stipends that are very difficult sometimes to manage all of your bills and then to afford nutritious foods. And so the role of a graduate student, they are involved in a lot, right? They're teaching, they're doing research, they're just great, right? But this doesn't allow them a lot of extra time to pick up an additional job. A lot of these students are working or studying, 80 plus hours. And so this really was what I started thinking about when creating Goods for the Herd is we need something to provide a resource. These students are investing a lot in terms of getting their education. They're investing time and money. And it worries me that some of them don't have their basic needs met, because focusing when you're worried about your bills or food is extremely difficult. So Goods for the Herd was created to provide a holistic support, right? We're giving out resources, the nutritious variety of foods, but we also want it to be a space where we can educate, we can talk about budgeting, cooking, and nutrition. So we're really excited that we were able to see this work out.
I love that. I love that it's that holistic approach too. It isn't just giving food, it's resources, it's skills, it's so much more. You already kind of touched on this, but we're embedded in the Fargo-Moorhead community. There are lots of resources that surround campus. So why was it important that we create Goods for the Herd directly on our college campus for our students?
Yeah, I'm very glad you mentioned that. In the Fargo-Moorhead area, there are lots of great resources, and I don't want to take away from the great work they're doing. However, many students may not have proper transportation to get to those local food banks in the community. They may feel less comfortable lugging around those foods in a bus or a taxi. And it can also be intimidating being a college student, visiting a pantry in the community, possibly seeing elderlies or families and children and thinking, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe my need isn't as significant as these folks. So it was really important that we establish something central on our campus to create a warm and welcoming environment. And being located in the bookstore allows us to reach as many students as possible. Students are familiar with where the bookstore is located. We're able to have them come through, shop, get the items that they'd like, and we have very non-invasive bags that they carry outside of the bookstore, so no one really knows what they're doing. They could potentially be just shopping at the bookstore. So we really were happy that we're able to offer it centrally on campus so students really feel comfortable, and then we can create those really great relationships with students so that they feel comfortable reaching out to us saying, hey, I'm struggling, I really need help. And we say, great, here are the resources that we can provide you.
That's amazing. And I want to echo what you said about the anonymity and giving them that ability to go in and not have any stigma around needing to get a little extra help. That's wonderful. But Goods for the Herd isn't the only thing that NDSU is doing to help ensure that our students are food secure. So can you tell us a little bit more about Swipe Out Hunger and how that is leveraging some of our campus resources?
Absolutely. So I'm very excited that we have two initiatives. Swipe Out Hunger is a national program. A lot of different colleges and universities have implemented this, and I was so excited that we were able to do it as well. And essentially what it is this allows students to apply for meals in a very non-invasive manner. And they just express their need. We transfer the funds to their student ID card, and then they're able to use that in any of the dining centers. And we really like this because it also combats food waste, right? So dining may, throw out the food that they would have been giving out otherwise. So we're able to combat food insecurity while also kind of being mindful of food waste in our dining centers. So we're really pleased that we're able to offer Swipe Out Hunger on our campus as additional way to combat food insecurity.
Yeah, it's so important that we're having these open conversations about what it means to be food insecure and hungry, because it doesn't always look the way that we might expect it. So thank you so much for sharing these important insights, Megan.
Yes.
I want to take a little time to thank those who've supported NDSU's Food Security Fund and Goods for the Herd. First, this fund has garnered wide support from our NDSU faculty and staff. Those who work closely with our NDSU students see the challenges that they face every day, and they have invested in these programs since day one to lift up our NDSU students. Thank you to all the NDSU faculty and staff for your support. I'd also like to thank the City of Fargo for the grant that they provided to help us purchase foods for the pantry, as well as the Midwest Dairy Association for supplying a refrigerator and freezer. This allowed us to have nutrient-rich foods available to our students, like fresh dairy, fruits and vegetables, and animal proteins. Both of these gifts have made Goods for the Herd possible.
Yes, thank you so much. I also wanted to take a moment to thank all of our donors. It has made such an impact, being frontline in the pantry, interacting with the students, and really just seeing how much this helps them has been really great. And so I wanted to express my gratitude and appreciation towards all of the donors. And I ask that you continue to support this initiative. Cash donations are really great because then we are able to provide that variety and nutritious foods in our pantry. So thank you so much again, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you all for all your work, Megan, as well as for taking the time to share with us today. And thank you for taking the time to learn more about NDSU's food security research and programs. I hope that you've been inspired by what you've learned and inspired to make a gift to support our NDSU students. We put a link to the donation page in the chat, and for your convenience, the QR code on the screen that will take you directly to that page. As you think of investing in the future, one of the best ways you can do so is to pay it forward to the next generation. Thank you again for joining us today. Take care and go Bison.